we have now, a lot of people prefer to sit in the comfort of their homes and follow the proceedings of the servants of the Buddha via Zoom. However, all of you have decided to come here, and I have to say that being in this hall is something very special because it has an ambience of the Dhamma which goes back more than 1 century. And that is not something that can be replicated via Zoom. So I'm very happy that all of you are here. And despite the larger numbers on Zoom, I can see many people who have switched on to the Zoom, and the smaller numbers in the hall. I think it's really heartening that all of you, and all of you Zoom listeners also, have decided to follow this program today. Now, just before I came on to this place about 5 minutes ago, our president gave me a bit of a shock because she said that I should conduct the meditation. So anyway, I think it's a good opportunity for us. We normally practice Anapanasati and other types of meditation, but today, since the topic is facing death with a smile, I thought that perhaps the appropriate subject for meditation today would be Marananusati. Now, this is a Anusati, which is actually a reflection that the Buddha taught, because as you all know, the Buddha taught, I think, about 40 types of meditation. And these Anusatis are also a part of those meditative instructions that the Buddha gave. So let us now engage in the practice of Marananusati, which is reflecting on death. Because we all know that this is the inevitable lot of all sentient beings, but it is really that we reflect on it. So it is something very powerful to reflect on death, because when we reflect on death, we realize that this moment actually could be our last moment. This day could be our last day. So it makes life that much more meaningful, and it makes one much more mindful of one's own actions. So therefore, Marananusati is a very important reflection. And I'd like to just give you a few instructions so that you can practice it now for 5 minutes. And I will end the session by chanting the Anicavata Sankara, which is what is chanted at every funeral. Now, before I want to just give you the meaning of Anicavata Sankara, because some people think that this is a stanza that should be only recited at funerals. But that's not the case, because it is a very beautiful stanza. Anicavata Sankara Upadavaya Dhammino Upajitva Nirujjanti Te Sangupa Samosaka. The meaning is, impermanent, alas, are all conditioned things. They arise and then they pass away. From birth to death, the life flux swings. Bliss truly dawns when restlessness dies away. So that's the meaning of the stanza. And to engage in this reflection of Marananusati, I'd like to tell you that you first start by closing your eyes, and then bring your attention to the present moment. And then reflect on your body as it's sitting here. And then cast your mind to the entirety of the sentient world, which consists of humans, animals, devas, brahmas, those who live in woeful states, and of course the humanity that encompasses this planet of ours. And then reflect on the fact that at this very moment, there are thousands of sentient beings passing away. In this human plane of ours, at this very moment, there are thousands of people who are breathing their last. This is the reality. Now bring that reflection a bit closer and reflect on this country of ours, that at this very moment, there are many people who are passing away. Animals are passing away. Now bring your attention closer to your own circle of friends, relations, loved ones. They may not be passing away at this minute, but there have been deaths taking place. Many of our loved ones have passed away. And reflect on that fact that many of our loved ones, dear ones, have passed away. Now bring your attention to yourself and reflect on the fact that from the time of your birth, you are marching towards one goal, and that is death. At the same time, the cells in your body are dying every instant. And you who were a baby many decades ago, think of your own life, how the baby changed into a teenager, an adult, a mature being. And now I can say that most people in our audience today at Maitriya Hall may be either bordering on becoming a senior citizen or are already a senior citizen. I'm certainly a senior citizen. Maybe I can say I'm with one foot in the grave. So I've just got to take the other foot in. But we don't know what minute death will come. So this is the reality. And just reflect on this for a few minutes. And I will end the session with chanting of the Anicca Sankha. Anicca Sankhara Utpadavaya Dhammi Utpajitva Niruchanti tesang upasamosiko anicca sankara utpadamaya dhammino utpajjitva nirucchanti tesang upasamosiko anicca sankara utpadamaya dhammino utpajjitva nirucchanti tesang upasamosiko. Now you can open your eyes and let's begin on the subject which I have given, facing death with a smile. Now I have to explain this topic. I have not said how to face death with a smile, because then I would have to give you a formula which works. And then I would have to say that I used the formula, I died with a smile, and then I can come back and say, right, I used the formula and I died with a smile. So that's not possible. Therefore, I have termed it facing death with a smile. And all that I'm doing today is to share some reflections with you regarding how we could have a peaceful death, because we all have to face it soon. Or who knows? We don't know that. So to some extent, we have already now reflected on death because of the Marananusati that we did just now. So I'm going to elaborate on this subject by sharing my thoughts with you. That's what I'm doing. So facing death with a smile, there is no guarantee that you can face death with a smile. However, you can increase the probability of facing death with a smile. The person who can be guaranteed of facing death with a smile would be someone who has attained Soan, or is a stream winner, and is either Soan, Sakudagami, Anagami, or Aran. They can face death with a smile, and that's guaranteed. In our case, we are trying to increase the probability of facing death with a smile. So my, I would say, thesis today is that if you can live your life with a smile, then you can face death with a smile. So the one certainty of life, as we know, is death. Now, if I were to go to a soothsayer and I want him to predict my future, this is a very common pastime in Sri Lanka, where people go to horoscope readers and palm readers and light readers and all sorts of readers, and they want their death predicted. Now, if I go to somebody, or if I say I'm a soothsayer, and you come to me, I can say, I guarantee you that you are going to die. And I will be 100% correct. Of course, I can't say at what time, what minute, or how you are going to die. But my prediction will be spot on. Now, one of our former presidents, actually, he was Mr. Alec Robertson, who was president for 30 years. And he had the ability to translate the Dhamma into a form that everybody could understand and bring it to life. And he used to always say that a man who is condemned to death knows, I mean, if he's in death row, he knows exactly at what minute he is going to die, how he is going to die, and when he is going to die. Now, in our case, Mr. Robertson used to say, we have the noose tied round our necks, and we don't know at what minute it's going to be tightened. So that is our predicament. Now, although this is such a, obvious thing, most people don't like to talk about it. And in fact, when I decided on this subject and shared it with a few people, there were some sort of exclamations because death is something that people don't like to talk about. And I have to say, particularly in Western countries, they say, oh, it's very morbid to talk about death. Nobody talks about death. And I mean, I've lived in the UK for a very long time. They absolutely don't talk about death. Even when you go to a funeral there, they have the memorial service for the person who died. And then after that, it's like blank. You simply don't talk about it because they say, oh, it's very morbid. And then even at the memorial service, they say this is a celebration of the life of so-and-so. The fact that the person has died, they don't refer to really. They don't talk about that aspect. However, there are many Western philosophers, I have to say, who have made very profound statements regarding death. For example, the famous poet Thomas Gray, who wrote his poem Elegy Written in a Country Churchyard. And actually, you can go to that churchyard in Stoke Poges and see his grave for yourself. And there it is written, the boasts of heraldry, the pomp of power, and all that beauty, all that wealth ever gave, awaits alike the inevitable hour. The paths of glory lead but to the grave. However, many people don't think about that. They walk along the paths of glory and get their heads bloated, and they function as though there is no such thing as death. But again, I have to say that there is the popular saying also, come ye slow or come ye fast, it is but death that comes at last. And then we in Sri Lanka also have many sayings, Jivitang aniyatang, maranang niyatang. Now, these are some things that we should be reflecting on. And then as I'm glad that Manu gave me this opportunity to conduct the meditation, because to some extent that's a good start for this talk, so that you actually practice the Marananusati. So when we come to the subject of how to increase our probability of facing death with a smile, there are many points that I want to make. Now, the first point is that we should remove the fear of death. Now, a lot of people who don't like to talk about death, they are frightened to even talk about death. But if we constantly reflect on death, and if we do this Marananusati or recite the Anicavata Sankara daily, which I have to say is something I do as I wake up every morning, I recite Anicavata Sankara because that reminds me that this could be my last day. So I think it helps in improving our mindfulness. So removing the fear of death, I think, is one of the most important things with regard to accepting death. So it's, I think, something very healthy to talk about death. Unlike people who think talking about death is morbid, I think from a Buddhist point of view, it's a very healthy thing to talk about death. And I have to say that there's quite a difference in Western societies and our societies in the East, particularly Sri Lanka. Now, when we go to a funeral, we talk about the fact that the person has died. You ask, how did the person die? What happened? And then we condole. And then also our Buddhist ceremonies are geared towards uh, uh, making us realize the inevitability of death. We have the 7 days almsgiving, we have the 3 months almsgiving, we have the 1 year almsgiving. Not only does that help the family members to overcome their grief, but it also helps the others who participate in these things to realize the inevitability of death. So removing the fear is one of the most important things. And here I'd like to say that many people, okay, you might say, okay, I'm reflecting on the Marananusati and I can accept my death. But when it comes to the death of loved ones, people find it very difficult to accept. And particularly for parents to accept the death of a child is something very difficult. A lot of people go into depression if a child dies, particularly a young child or a young person. And so that is something that even parents, they may reflect on their own death, but they never want to ever think that their child could die. Now, I have to say that my meditation master, Venerable Homagama Kondanja, when he was teaching meditation, he said to me, Anoja, you have to think about the possibility that your own children can die. And you have to tune your mind to accepting such a thing, because that is the worst possible thing that could happen to a parent, the death of a child. So we as Buddhists, we have to reflect on these things because these things are happening all the time. Now, recently we have heard of the deaths by suicide of many young people and the torment of the parents. The death of a child can lead to depression in the parents, and I've seen this happening. But if we familiarize with ourselves with the fact that the child is also a sentient being whose life is impermanent, then I think we can sort of tune our mind towards accepting that. So the first point is removing the fear of death. Now, the second thing is that it is important to not have regrets. At the point we die, we shouldn't have regrets, or we should have done this, or we should have done that. So my contention is that if you lead a good life, you can have a good death. You don't have to have any regrets. So now what is the Buddhist approach to that? The Buddhist approach is, the Buddha has very clearly said for householders like you and I, we are not monks, but we are householders. But the Buddha has given us many prescriptions that we should put into practice. And talking of practice, I want to say, again, I'm sort of quoting from Mr. Alec Robertson, because actually he is the one who created an interest in me in actually following the Buddha Dhamma. I went to a Buddhist school and we had all these Buddhist practices, but really learning about the Dhamma and then really realizing its importance in our daily life, I think I owe a huge debt of gratitude to Mr. Alec Robertson. And he used to always say, an ounce of practice is worth more than a ton of theory. Because we are all very good at theorizing. We can quote from suttas, we are studying Abhidhamma, we are doing all sorts of things, and we are operating at a theoretical level. But do we, in our daily life, from moment to moment, practice these things, which is the most important thing. So in order not to have regrets at the point of death, it is very important that one should have practiced the Dhamma. You might be conversant in the entire Tripitaka, or you might be able to recite the entire Tripitaka by heart. But that doesn't change your behavior unless you actually translate that into daily practice. So with regard to daily practice, the Buddha has said to us householders 3 things: dana, sila, bhavana. So now let me touch on the sila first, that the Buddha here very clearly explained that we as householders, we have to practice the 5 precepts. Refrain from killing. Now here we should not only look at the negative side of refraining, but also the positive side of actually promoting the well-being of other sentient beings. So that's another dimension. Then refraining from stealing or engaging in corrupt practices. So it's not only refraining, but it's also promoting the practices of honesty. Then we come to sexual misconduct. Here again, refraining and also promoting people to not engage in sexual misconduct. Then the 4th one is not engaging in lying, harsh speech, gossip, and frivolous talk. Now, just before I came onto the platform now, some of my colleagues down here, they were asking, is it okay to sort of compliment somebody on their attire or something like that? I said, it's fine. The Buddha has never said, don't compliment people on their attire or anything like that. But because they were wondering whether that's like, I don't know, trying to, I don't know, being, I don't know, what was the reservation you had? So the thing is, we are engaged in daily life. And if you compliment somebody, I think that makes the other person happy. And it also promotes social harmony and all of. So frivolous talk doesn't mean that you can't compliment somebody. Frivolous talk means talking in such a way that you spoil the reputation of somebody else, or you sort of make innuendos about other people. And basically, frivolous talk and gossip go hand in hand. So that's what the Buddha said we should refrain from. And then, of course, getting ourselves intoxicated. Now, this has become a very serious problem in our country because drug addiction is on the rise, and drug addiction among young people is now increasing exponentially. And so this is a challenge for us as a society to prevent the intoxication of people. And also where we are concerned, we shouldn't be intoxicated, because that prevents us from having a clear mind. That is the reason why the Buddha said we should not take intoxicants, because it impedes our ability to be mindful. Because a person who is intoxicated, all the inhibitions are taken away, and that person can commit all the other crimes. So now, if a person practices the 5 precepts, that person will have a clear conscience. And a person with a clear conscience, I'm sure, can die with a smile. So that's a very simple formula that people can practice. Then my 3rd point is not having enemies and not engaging in anger. Now, we see a society and a world that is in flames, and it's caused by anger. There are wars going on. Now, with political, I don't know, debates, it's all infuriating people. They even commit murder. attack other people. So not being angry and then not also having enemies. Now the Buddha has given the perfect antidote to anger and enmity. And that is the practice of metta bhavana, the meditation on loving kindness, where we practice loving kindness towards ourselves and then we radiate it outwards gradually to our society, to the whole world, and then to all sentient beings. Now, this is the antidote to anger. A person who practices the loving kindness meditation will find that their anger goes down. And the Buddha has given 11 benefits of the practice of loving kindness that you can experience in this life itself. I'll list those things because I think it's important for everybody to know that. One is you sleep well. Secondly, you're free from nightmares. Thirdly, you wake up with a smile. Fourth, you have good friends and you are popular and you are pleasing to others. Devas will protect you. Weapons and poisons will not harm you. Non-humans will not harm you. You have a serene face and you are able to concentrate quickly and well, and you are able to die mindfully. Now, this is something very important for us. If we can die mindfully, then we can die with a peaceful mind. And then the Buddha also said that if you die with loving kindness in your mind, you can be born in the Brahma world. So I would advocate the active practice of metta. Now, the Dalai Lama, I'm glad that Venerable Olande Ananda last week spoke about the different sects in Buddhism, because when you come to the Mahayana sect, which is where the Dalai Lama comes in, the Dalai Lama emphasizes compassion. And now you all know that in Tibet, the Chinese invaded Tibet and killed thousands of monks. And so the Dalai Lama had to flee Tibet because he also would have been killed. So he has said to his people, because even now there are a lot of human rights violations going on in Tibet. I have visited Tibet. A lot of human rights violations being perpetrated against the Tibetans, against Tibetan monks. The Potala Palace, which had something like 1,000 monks at the time that Dalai Lama was there, now there are only about 10 monks. So the Dalai Lama never took up weapons or never encourages people to take up weapons against the invaders. He simply said, we are Buddhists, we have to practice metta. And he says, it's very easy to practice loving kindness towards people you like. The most difficult thing is to practice loving kindness towards people who you don't like, towards offensive people. And that is where we have to practice loving kindness and have an attitude of metta towards people who are hateful. Buddha has very clearly said, practice loving kindness towards those who are hateful. And we have seen this in his life, that those who tried to kill him, those who tried to harm him, he practiced loving kindness, and that stopped them in their tracks. Because it's like a negative force against, it's like an electric charge, the negative and the positive. So a person who is offensive is stopped in their tracks when you practice loving kindness. And the thing is, it's very important to practice this thing so that you yourself can feel the benefits of it. And we have to be very mindful not to make enemies in our life. Because if we have enemies and the enemy's face comes in front of us when we are dying, certainly we can't die with a smile, I don't think. So that is where the practice of loving kindness comes in. And loving kindness towards those who are not your friends. Loving kindness towards your enemies is the most important thing. And this also requires an attitude of forgiveness. That if someone has done something wrong to you, we have to have an attitude of forgiveness. And I think all the time we have to think, I am not perfect and others are not perfect. Now, I am not perfect and I might offend somebody, and then I would like that person to forgive me. Similarly, if someone has, upset me, I should be able to forgive that person. And so we have to ask for forgiveness and we have to give forgiveness. So it's a two-way process. So if there is no anger in your mind and you have no enemies, then you increase the probability of being able to die with a smile. Now, my fourth point is not having attachments, that is tanha. Now, reflect on your own life. From the time we were born, we have been acquiring all sorts of things. You start by acquiring qualifications, your entire schooling, your university education, all of that, you are amassing qualifications. Then what happens? You start looking for positions and you are amassing positions and titles. Then what happens? You amass properties and wealth. And not only that, the society, people like to have all kinds of connections, being connected to some big person or whatever. Because all of these things, what do they do? They increase your self-importance. It increases one's greed and increases mana. Mana is arrogance. And then it creates a greater attachment to all these things. So this whole preoccupation that we have with amassing qualifications, titles, wealth, properties, this and that, I think we have to take a second look at that and think, this is not what we should be doing. And develop the art of letting go. Because the more you amass, the more craving it creates. And what did the Buddha say about this? Buddha said, Tanhaya jayati soko, tanhaya jayati bayam, tanhaya vipamuttasi, natti soko kuto bayam. Dhammapada 216. The translation is, from craving springs grief. From craving springs fear. For him who is wholly free from craving, there is neither grief nor fear. So at the point of death, if you don't have that craving, then that is a very peaceful mind that you can have. But we have heard of stories, there are particularly Buddhist stories where people have been clinging on to their properties, clinging on to their money, and they can't have a peaceful end. So it's important to let go and be free from all attachments. Now here again, I'd like to quote the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama said, the impermanence of this present life will force you to leave all wealth behind. But by giving it away, you can take it with you as good karma. So that's a very nice saying. And I'd also like to quote another passage from the Dhammapada 62. Putta matti danang matti, iti balo vihanatti, attahi attano natti, kuto putta, kuto dana. The meaning is, I have sons, I have wealth, so thinks the fool and is troubled. Verily, he himself is not his own. Whence sons? Whence wealth? So that's what the Buddha said. Therefore, we've got to give up these things, and apart from attachment to properties and other things, one of the most difficult things to become detached from is your attachment to children and families. So many people simply cannot let go of this. And then again, I want to say, Pemato jayati soko, Pemato jayati bayam, Pemato vipamutasi, natti soko kuto bayam. From endearment springs grief, and the same stanza, that it causes sorrow. So from my own life, I have to just say something that, I mean, when you go for these Dhamma talks, meditation courses and so on, you talk to the monks and the nuns. And sometimes then you talk about your children and so on. And the advice that I have been given right along consistently is, they say, cut the umbilical cord. Now, many mothers simply cannot cut the umbilical cord. They are, hooked on to their children, even when the children are grown up and they have left the country. Even then, these ties are very, very strong, and it's very difficult to let go of this attachment to children. But we have to remember that at the point of death, we have to not only leave the children, we have to leave our own bodies. So this is a reflection that we need to engage in. And so the other important point I want to make is that, okay, you diminish your attachment to children, but one of the very difficult things to let go of is the attachment to oneself. This is the most difficult thing. So how do we give up this attachment to this idea that there is a me, mine, I? We have to start. Again, the Buddha has given us the prescriptions for all these things. The Buddha has said, start by looking at your body. Your body is in a state of decay. And diminish the attachment to the body. And here again, we can engage in the practice of Pilikul Bhavana, which is the reflection on the impurities of the body. The Buddha has named the 32 parts of the body, starting with Atti, Masmin, Kaya, Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, and so on. And if we reflect on that, and then we take each of these, now when we say Atti, right? Masmin kaya kesa. You start with kesa, the hair. When we do the meditation, we have to think that we have removed the hair and it's in front of us. Kesa loma, that is hair on the body. Imagine it's in front of you. Naka is nails. Danta, teeth. So think of your teeth being outside of you. And the Buddha said, reflect on the body as though these are like bundles of different things, like a sack full of different stuff. So you can look at the different parts of the body and think these are all encased in a sack, which is the skin. And then we are sort of glorifying this body, which is in a state of decay. And then we are so attached to it. Now, I said that in the meditation, you remove the parts and you look at it. And then it helps to reduce the attachment to your body. Because just think, if you see somebody else's kidneys, do you know which is my kidneys and somebody else's kidney? You don't. And now with all this, implant technology and so on, you can be even having a pig's heart. So being attached to the body, now whose body are you attached to? If you've got a implanted heart, transplanted heart, is it your heart that you are attached to, or the other person's heart that you have that has been transplanted into you? So this idea that there's a self is a very ephemeral thing, and it is in a state of impermanence. And that is why the reflection on the impurities of the body helps us to reduce the attachment to the body. Now, in our, as the Buddha has explained, the body is not the only thing that constitutes the self. This idea of, personality view that we have, me, mine, myself, all that actually is triggered by the mind. So if you look at the human entity as the 5 aggregates, reducing attachment to the body is reducing the attachment to rupa, which is formations, which is the first aggregate. But then we have the mental factors, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana, that is feelings, perceptions, volitions, consciousness, which is the mind working. And it is these things, the consciousness, the perceptions, the feelings, and the volitions, which actually strengthen the idea that there is a self. So this is, again, something to be reflected, that this idea of a self is really something in your mind. It's based on your own perception that there is a person here. And then you attach all your past memories and everything, and you say, oh, this is my life. I did this, I did that. I am this, I am that, and so on. So taking the 5 aggregates and then separating each of them, the feelings, actually the Buddha compared all these things to very ephemeral things like Vedana is like, I think that's a mirage, right, Mano? Vedana is like a mirage, it comes and goes. Perception. All right, yes, it's a water bubble. It's a water bubble. Then perceptions are mirage. You perceive something, you see somebody and you say, oh no, I don't like that person. That's only a perception, it's a mirage. You might go closer to the person and you might think, oh no, that person looks quite nice. Or based on some past something or the other, you may have a perception that you don't like someone. So these are all very ephemeral things. And then based on that, actions are taken. That's the problem. And these perceptions also cause people to have various views and opinions. All this political division is because of a view that people have. One person has this view, the other person has the other view, and they say my view is the correct thing, the other one is wrong, and they will even go to wars over it. We can see the Ukrainian war is basically that. So, and of course, we create divisions based on these things. So now, if we can let go of this idea that there's a self, then there's a good chance of our being able to die with a smile. And here I'd like to bring your attention to the Buddha's first and second discourses. Now, the Buddha's first discourse was the Dhammacakkappavattana Sutta. And when he gave that discourse, just one monk, Ponnanja, he attained Soan. But the others couldn't quite get it. So then he went on to preach the Anatta Lakkana Sutta, which is the idea of non-self. Anatta means non-self. And then he said to the monks, is Rupa, that is your body, is that yourself? Then the monk said no. Then he asked, are your feelings, do you call your feelings you, yourself? They said no. Then he said, are perceptions what you call self? They said no. Are volitions self? They said no. And then consciousness. And we have eye consciousness, ear consciousness, mind consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, etc. Is that what you call self? The monk said no. And then having listened to the Anatta Lakkana Sutta, the entirety of the 5 ascetics, they all attained enlightenment. So of course, in our case, we have listened to the Anatta Lakkana Sutta many times. We have been discussing all these things many times, but we have not attained enlightenment, right? So perhaps it's because we have not heard it directly from the Buddha, perhaps. Or perhaps we have not engaged in full-time meditation. But however, all is not lost, because even as householders, the Buddha taught us dana, sila, bhavana. And then getting on to dana, that's another way of letting go. Dana is a way of letting go of your material possessions. So it's not just giving, danas to monks, but it is having an attitude of generosity daily, in your daily life, towards the people whom you employ, towards, very unsavory people, whoever it is, having an attitude of generosity. And the practice of generosity is something that helps to reduce this craving. So these points, if you practice, then there's a good chance that you will be able to die with a smile. But what is the guarantee? Is there a guarantee that you could die with a smile? So I would say that the only guarantee of dying with a smile is if you can attain Soan. That is the first stage of sainthood. Now, don't be alarmed, because there are so many householders who attain Soan. We have the case of Visakha during the time of the Buddha. She was a lady who had 13 children. She led a household life, and she liked to dress well and all that, but she attained Soan. Then Anathapindika was a banker, and he also attained Soan. So it is not an impossibility for householders to attain Soan. So what is it that we have to do in order to attain Soan? Now, I was talking about the idea of the personality view that we have. So if you want to attain Soan, you have to get rid of that personality view, I, me, mine. And that is called Sakkaya Ditthi, the personality view. You have to get rid of that one. Then secondly, you have to get rid of any doubts in the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha in terms of the efficacy of the Dhamma to attain enlightenment. And then thirdly, Silabbata Paramasa, that is attachment to rites and rituals. Now, the popular Buddhism that's found in Sri Lanka is a propagation of rites and rituals. Because when someone falls ill, they go to a Bodhi tree and they pour water on the Bodhi tree, even when it's raining. They go around the Bodhi tree and they think, the person is going to get well. Then, go and offer some flowers. Now, while offering flowers, actually, if they reflect on the Pujeni Buddhang Kusumena Nena, Punyena Mete Nacha Hotu Mukha, Puppam Milayati Atai Dhamme, Kayo Tatayati Vinasa Bhava. Actually, that's a reflection of death. Kayo Tatayati Vinasa Bhava means just as these flowers fade away, so my body will fade away. So if it is done correctly, that can also be a point of enlightenment for the individual. Enlightenment meaning being able to perceive impermanence. So if having practiced all these things, a person has gained Soan state, that person is guaranteed to have a peaceful death with a smile, and also the Soan is assured of a good rebirth, and full enlightenment is guaranteed in 7 births. So I think our efforts should be geared towards that. And many speakers have spoken here about the importance of striving towards Soma. And there are 4 things that the Buddha said are conducive towards the attainment of Soan. And that is 1, Saddhamma Savana. That is listening to the correct Dhamma, which is what we are doing here in the Maitriya Hall and have done so for more than 100 years. Secondly, Kalyana Mittata, that is having good friends, that is friends who are in the Dhamma, who will advise you on how to practice the Dhamma and then veer you away from misdeeds and encourage you on the correct path. Now, generally speaking, for a meditator, the Kalyana Mitta is the Kammatana Guru, the teacher who practices, who teaches the meditation subjects and so on. Then thirdly, Yoniso Manasikara means wise reflection. Now, these points that I have mentioned today are to be reflected upon. So if we engage in wise reflection regarding the impermanence, then regarding dukkha, and then regarding the fact that there is no self, those things actually promote clarity. And in the practice of vipassana, ultimately, those are the 3 things that you are trying to see. You are trying to realize impermanence, realize the dukkha that it entails, and then thirdly, realize that there is no such thing as a self. So by engaging in Yoniso Manasikara, you can tune your mind towards that. Then fourthly, Dhammanu Dhamma Patipada. That is practicing the correct Dhamma and practicing it rigorously and with mindfulness on a daily basis. So as I said before, and also the Dhammanu Dhamma Patipada also means treading the Noble Eightfold Path, which actually means Dana, Sila, Sila, Samadhi, Panya, which is enshrined in the Noble Eightfold Path. So to bring my talk to a conclusion, I have to say that facing death with a smile, for a Soan person, it's guaranteed that the person can face death with a smile. For all of us who are not Soan yet, we have to strive to practice all of the things that I mentioned. And I just like to just remind you that we have to get rid of the fear of death. Then we have to have no regrets, because we have to feel that we have not harmed other people. So by practicing the 5 precepts, we can do that. And then also not having enemies and not having anger, which you can actually practice with with the regular practice of the metta bhava, and then not having attachments, which is something you have to reflect on, and engaging yoniso manasikara, and then getting rid of the attachment to the self, which is the most difficult thing to do, where you can practice the Pilikul Bhavana to get rid of attachment to the body, and then engage in Yoniso Manasikara with regard to the mind and how the feelings, perceptions, volitions, and consciousness create this image of a me and mine and myself. So engaging in all those practices and reflecting on all that, and living your life with a smile. Now, if you live your life with a frown, I think you can be sure that you can die with a frown. But if you live your life with a smile, then I think you can die with a smile. So that these are the thoughts that I have had with regard to this subject. And I am simply sharing it with them because I am not a Soan or anything like that to be able to say this is it. So therefore, I am sharing these thoughts with you because I feel that by practicing the Dhamma and practicing it with sincerity, we can enhance our probability of facing death with a smile. Thank you. Now, I'd like to say that having shared these thoughts with you, I'd like to encourage you to ask questions or express any views or opinions or points you have, because it's nice to have a discussion. Now, audience, would you like to ask a question? I think I see Mala with a hand raised. Mala, can you open your screen, please? I see a hand raised, Mala. Can you hear me? Samantha Jayatilak, you have sent some remarks. Would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you. Yes, can you hear me? I've unmuted. Is it audible? Can you hear? I've unmuted. Is it?
I can hear
Samantha,
you.
would you like?
We can hear you.
Samantha, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you. That I was just saying that was a very interesting and valuable talk, Anoja, and I really appreciate that because I myself.
Sorry, Samantha, could you please repeat that?
Yes, thank you, Anoja. I was just saying that it was a really valuable and a beautiful talk, and it really helped me because I've got the old problem of being attached to parents who I'm currently looking after, and one day I know I have to let go of them. And what you said really resonated with me, and good to learn as well, because the only way I think I can let go of them is by seeing impermanence of the body. And if I obviously am working, practicing and trying to understand that. And the attachment, as you say, to loved ones, that's very difficult. The clinging to the five aggregates. So hopefully I can chip away at that. And so that really helped in basically all the wisdom that you shared. And in the end, I suppose I can hopefully die happily if I do wholesome actions, so learn to do wholesome actions throughout my life. and then have no regrets, basically. So that keeping up the morality. But thank you. I really benefited from that talk. Thank you, Anoja. Thank you. Yeah, that was my thing. So basically,
thank you,
to see the
Samantha.
impermanence.
I'm sorry, I can't hear from this platform because your voice is being projected into the hall. So I can't hear from this point where I am. But
yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think if you can put your questions on the chat, then I can read that out to the audience. Now, from the Maitriya hall, are there any questions in the meantime? Yes, please. And please talk into the mic so that everybody can hear. Can you hold him? Hold it right next to your mouth. It seems that Samadhi is what needs to be more emphasized because constantly overthinking this is fascinating kind of thing. So I just wanted to answer on the distinction which kind of yeah, I think if I understand your question correctly, what you're saying is that with regard to the reflection on the 5 aggregates and seeing that the 5 aggregates are not self, that is engaging in vipassana meditation. And then you are asking about yoniso manasikara, which is wise reflection, which one can do. So now with regard to the meditative practice, now this is what I have sort of gathered. Don't take me as the final authority on it at all. You can check with others as well. Now, with regard to the practice of meditation, it is very important that you practice a degree of samatha meditation so that your mind is in samadhi. And now, in a state of samadhi, the mind is free of the hindrances. The hindrances are Kamachanda, Vyapada, Uddacha, Kukkucha, Tinamidda, Vichikicha. That is craving, anger, restlessness and worry, doubts, and lethargy. So when the mind is in samadhi, the mind is free of all those things. And then at that point, it is possible to reflect on these things, like the 5 aggregates. Then, Buddha has given various things. You can reflect on impermanence. And so then the mind is very clear, and it is like a searchlight, which can then actually penetrate the subject with precision. And so the samadhi mind is able to actually realize the truth of anicca, because then if you reflect on the impermanence of the body, right, you will be able to see it with much greater clarity than with a mind that is not targeted towards the subject. So meditation teachers explain it like this. They say, now if you just put on a light and you want to look at something closely, you can't see. But if you take a torch where the light is, the beam is actually focused, then you can see it more clearly. So the samadhi mind is a focused mind. And with that focused mind, you can then reflect on these things. And then the realization will dawn when the mind is clear. And now, for instance, Ajahn Brahm says that it's like a searchlight. You can then beam your mind, and it's like a searchlight which can then actually penetrate the subject. Yeah, so overthinking means the restless mind. So the meditation that is advocated for the restless mind is the Anapanasati meditation. So if you practice the Anapanasati meditation, then the mind becomes very tranquil, and you can see that for yourself. So that is the antidote to the restless mind.
Also, I think we have to balance one sort of interest in low, the Vijeyesekera, looking at the interest qualities, and Intoxicants of Maitriya, the concentration of the body and the unwholesomeness and the concentration of the body, unwholesomeness, and they are more closer to the person. So, start the other and then samadhi the company. Depending on the mood and depending on the place, if they have lighter what is unfolding, what is just a home.
Yeah, so the thing is, this Anapanasati meditation is something that's, advocated for everybody, because it tranquilizes the mind, it makes you feel very peaceful. And so I think for us householders, engaging in the Anapanasati is very good. And as Mano pointed out very clearly, Buddhanusati is a very good meditation where you reflect on the qualities of the Buddha, taking the Itipiso Gatava and then reflecting on each of those qualities. Itipiso Bhagava, Arahant, like that is a very good meditation. So the thing is, we have to develop these things gradually. There are no shortcuts and there are no high jumps or long jumps. We have to proceed along the path very patiently, not expecting results. Because expecting results is another form of tanha. So just simply practice and just be relaxed with the practice. And even when the mind wanders, just be relaxed about that, because that is the nature of the mind to wander. And then if you notice that the mind has wandered and you bring it back, that is a type of vipassana, where you notice the wandering mind and the lack of control you have over your own mind. So you can't say, I'm in control of my mind, because you're not. Nobody is, absolutely nobody is in control of their mind, because the moment they shut their eyes, the mind goes here, there, and everywhere. Any other?
I think I understand. In Sri Lanka, we had this paper came and yes, paper holding and their holding. But now, they show that we have a holding. We are in any line. We don't know the order, but and that is not an immediate interest. We are using this line from the moment of birth. Of course, so I tend to some something more. Mindful. So thank you.
Yes, so I have to say that I'm a, yes, sir, Soma. While Soma is coming, I just want to say this. I have to say I'm on the verge of hitting 80, which means I'm just about to, get into the grave. So I thought, this is a good subject for me to talk about so that, I can share my thoughts with others.
This is not a question, but I really want to appreciate your talk and clearly you talked about things and years of experience and experiential knowledge and that's great that it's all there with stories, with sayings, with data, and lots of things that are nice. Thank you so much. And on a very, very important topic. So nothing sort of being so on we guarantee that slide on that day. And I think anyway, share what you said that when the person is dying, the last thought is one to
Yeah.
So depending on the object of the I mean that determines where I go with this visitor. So the object of the visitor is very likely to be something that we are accustomed to. So it's a good idea to practice something to keep the mind away from all that thoughts. And constantly practice something that you could say maybe mental, maybe generosity, but it's much better if it's something about it's much better if you can be something or and you can to see that things are not permanent. Maybe it's quite likely, not sure, but likely because we believe that we have I'm not saying it's my thoughts. Thank you. And then once again, I want to say thank you so much for your talk. It's very, very glorious. And may your journey sunshine strong and complete.
Thank you, Soma, for those remarks. And also I have to say, Soma, thank you for reminding me about the Chutis Chitta and Pratisanjivijnana and Marana Sanna Chitta Vidi, which are it's a series of thoughts before death and then the relinking consciousness. So actually, now what I have said is that if we practice all these things, then our propensity is towards these things. So depending on our propensities, it's likely that we will die with a good thought. Whereas if a person's mind is completely saturated with anger, then it's unlikely that the person can have a peaceful thought at the end. But if a person's mind is saturated with goodness, compassion, and metta, then the likelihood is that those thoughts will prevail at the end. Yeah.
Asking there are different thoughts. The life of company is way from that otherwise, otherwise, asking the number of always do, or ask more something because something, you can set the same mind. And perhaps it will take us not so easy, but now they keep them interested in something that is called good day, or we have to do it. The market is not wrong, but we need to be understanding the scope is comfortable, is involved.
I have written a living will, and there I have said I do not want to be resuscitated, because then that will disturb the mind, and if that, I mean, that's a very painful thing, right? Resuscitation. So if you become a bit conscious with that and then you die like that, I don't think that's very peaceful. I don't know, doctors may disagree.
I think the technical guide I see I say only a painkiller and hydration, nothing else. It's not legally to do that, but we do that and it's obviously now as for that. Even with my own teacher or get it but that was exactly what I done because we had to that. But you know, the doctor came, said it's not done because we had to go and he just said, because I need
Any other questions or anything? On the chat, there are some things, Manu. I don't know, how do we open the chat? There are 6 things there. Right now it says,
beautiful, thank you, that sort of thing.
yeah, no, that the last one, there's a point that
Can I see the impermanence of the 5 aggregates? With that, again, someone she had done that.
Please explain. Now there's a question
In the
please explain what ego is in the Buddhist way. Now, ego is simply this idea that there is a me, mine, and myself. That is what is called the ego in the Buddhist way, and that is triggered by these by the perceptions, memories, consciousness, and feelings. So, and also your memory, your memory of your past lives. Now, say you are thinking of, I don't know, all the qualifications you have or something like that, that boosts the ego. Ego is the idea of the self. So, so in the Buddhist analogy, you analyze it by looking at the 5 aggregates. So that's what I would say.
that is what.
Yeah. So I think we have come to the end of these proceedings. Yeah, I'd like to hand the mic over to Mano, President. And thank you for giving me this opportunity to share my thoughts with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anoja, for that very valuable and interesting Dhamma session. I just want to tell all our listeners that next week we have another very interesting and timely presentation. It is on, the topic is the statecraft of the Buddha, and it's about fostering unity and dialogue in a divisive world. So I suppose it's not just us, but there are some more important people who are into statecraft who should be listening. But let us, at least all of us, please join. And it's being presented by Don De Silva, based in the UK, currently based in the UK. And we know he gives a masterful presentation always. So we are looking forward to that. Let us then end this session where Anoja has really done an excellent job. and with both the meditation session as well as the Dhamma talk that followed. So with all that merit, let us share it with the Devas and the departed, with the usual stanzas. Ettavatata ammehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe deva anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavatata ammehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe bhuta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Ettavatata ammehi sampadam punya sampadam sabbe satta anumodantu sabba sampatti siddhya. Akasatta Chumanta Devanaga Mahitika Punyantan Anmoditva Rangakantu Sambuddha Sasanam. Akasatta Chumanta Devanaga Mahitika Punyantan Anmoditva Rangakantu Desanam. Akasatta Chumanta Devanaga Mahitika Punyantan Anmoditva Rangakantu Mamparanti. Idammi nyātīnaṁ hotu sukhitāhum punyātayo. Idam ho nyātīnaṁ hotu sukhitāhum punyātayo. Idam ho nyātīnaṁ hotu sukhitāhum punyātayo. Imina punya kammena māme bāla samāgamo satam samāgamo hotu bhavantam pattiya. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you, everyone. We will then end this session. As we go to record.